life like for a living Buddha in Tibet who has spent 50 years abroad? Tulku Koondhor knows the answer. He was only 4 years old when he was reincarnated as a living Buddha in the Qamdo Prefecture of eastern Tibet in 1956. He left Tibet 3 years later and eventually settled in Switzerland in the 1970s. 40 years later, however, he decided to move back in 2011. Why did he return to Tibet? How has life been ever since? Welcome to a special episode of The Point with me, Liu Xin, marking 70 years since the peaceful liberation of the Tibet Autonomous Region. My guest today is Living Buddha Koondhor himself. Welcome to The Point. The title of Living Buddha refers to eminent Tibetan monks and later was recognized as a special title for a monk who became the successor of the deceased leader of a monastery. Mr. Koondhor, you were reincarnated at the age of 4 as one of the 4 living Buddhas in the garden Jampaling Monastery in Qamdo. How has your life changed after that moment? And what became your primary duty as a living Buddha?
When I was 4 years old, I was recognized as the 6th Koondhor Tulku, the living Buddha of Jampaling Monastery in Tibet's Qamdo Prefecture. When I was young, gaining knowledge was the top priority, so I began to take various kinds of cultural courses. After I grew up, I participated in various Tibetan Buddhist rituals. As a living Buddha, it is my duty to deliver all living creatures from difficulties and bring benefits to them.
You left Tibet in 1959 around the age of 7. Why did you leave back then?
In about a year after I turned 6, I was the deputy director of the Qamdo People's Liberation Committee. Though I was pretty young, I would insist on participating in the different activities of the committee. For example, during that 1 year, as a member of the Qamdo People's Liberation Committee, I also participated in the democratic reform work of the Preparatory Committee for the Tibet Autonomous Region. There were about 10 to 15 children from aristocratic families who had the opportunity to study in Beijing with government support. However, my friends and relatives were strongly against this, as they were not aware of the true situation. They were afraid that we would be gone forever and would be away from our homeland for a lifetime. Due to this misperception, we left for India. There was no doubt that the country cared for us, and we were grateful for it.
Now, you first lived in Nepal and India for over a decade and then for another 4 decades in Switzerland. I know it's very difficult to summarize half a century, but if you could try, could you give us a brief description as to how you felt while being outside of China and what were the major difficulties that you had to overcome?
As I said earlier, I really enjoyed the time when I was a member of the Qamdo People's Liberation Committee. However, due to my parents' misunderstanding and concerns, they took me away to Nepal and India. At that time, it was tough living in a foreign country. Later, I went to Switzerland. Although the living conditions were good, my longing for home and my love for my country never wavered. When I started living abroad, I always listened to China National Radio, the Tibetan People's Radio, and similar stations that cope with homesickness, as well as to follow what was happening in my homeland. Then there was China's reform and opening up. I first returned home and went to inland areas in 1984.
In 1984, at the age of 32, you returned to pay a visit to Tibet Autonomous Region for the first time. Do you still remember scenes from that visit? What impressions did you get back then?
After returning, I found that Tibet had carried out massive infrastructure construction, such as building roads and repairing monasteries. People led better lives, so I felt happy and I was very excited.
After that trip, you stayed in Switzerland for 27 years before moving back. When was the final decision made? How was it made? Did your family and the local communities, especially the Tibetan community, support your decision?
In 1984, both the United Front Work Department and the CPC Central Committee and the leaders of Tibet like Yin Fa Tang and Pagbala Galeg Namgyai appealed to me to return to China. They said since the reform and opening up, the government had introduced many beneficial policies to support overseas Tibetans. At that time, I desperately wanted to return. However, my two children, who had just turned 8 and 9, were still in school. I couldn't leave them behind, and I had to wait till they finished school. In 2011, after my two children were 25, graduated and found jobs, they were able to stand on their own feet. So I was relieved and came back to China.
You mentioned previously that part of the reason you decided to come back was the local authorities' persistent investment in Buddhist temples and policies that respect religious freedom. Could you give us some examples? Do you think the outside world knows enough about these investment and policies? If not, why?
Some foreign news media outlets have been criticizing China's policies on religious freedom. It is incited by some anti-China and hostile forces abroad who want to provoke China. Even if our country does a good job, they will not stop. They will stir up public opinion against China and point fingers at China. At least I think so.
Over the past 10 years, what has been the biggest changes you have seen in Qamdo and Tibet in general? What's your observation of the local people's perception about these changes?
During this period, China celebrated the 40th anniversary of reform and opening up. What makes me most gratified and moved is the radical changes that have taken place in Tibet. It has been 10 years since I returned. With such dramatic changes, the living standard has been greatly improved and people are happier. It's impossible to list everything. Just to give you some brief examples, you can see the extent to which the state has taken care of various sectors such as transportation, medical care, education, environmental protection, and poverty alleviation. In short, Tibet has made world-renowned achievements in many aspects, which I am particularly delighted about. I have been to Europe and the United States, so I can say that the living conditions in Tibet and other parts of China have even overtaken the West in some aspects.
Could you just give us one example, please?
As I said, the U.S. healthcare system usually serves the interests of the bourgeoisie, but not the general public. I didn't really believe it when China first planned to build the medical insurance system. But when the system was officially established, I was stunned and proud. The U.S. does not have high-speed rail either. When I arrived in the U.S., I thought as a developed country, the facilities would be very advanced. At that time, I planned to take the high-speed train, but I was told there are no high-speed trains at all, only ordinary trains.
You're watching a special exclusive interview with living Buddha Koondhor joining us from Lhasa, Tibet. We'll take a short break and we'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Making sense of the overwhelming wave of information means cutting through the noise to shine a light on the heart of the story and making room for new perspectives. True understanding means the ability to see events from more than one side. I'm Liu Xin, and this is The Point.
Let's talk about the situation concerning religious belief in Tibet. According to your observation, do the local people have freedom of religious belief? How is that manifested? Could you use an example from your daily life to demonstrate your observations?
I do think highly of China's religious policy in terms of protecting religious freedom in Tibet and other parts of the country. It has spent significant sums on the repair and renovation of many monasteries and the preservation of intangible cultural heritage. The country has funded a considerable amount of money to build new Buddhist colleges in Tibetan areas and has trained many apprentices and sutra instructors. It has given great support to inherit and promote Buddhist culture.
In July 2006, the Kala Chakra instructions were delivered by the 11th Panchen Lama in Shikatsa, Tibet. The ritual includes a series of teachings that are given by gurus to help Buddhists through the cycle of life. Now, this was the first time in 50 years that such a ritual has been performed in Tibet, and more than 100,000 people attended the ritual. You were there on site as well. How did you feel at that moment? How do you look at the significance of China holding such large-scale religious events?
I was honored to participate in the event. The fact that a large number of believers were able to attend the Tantric Kala Chakra instructions is proof of religious freedom. Tibet has unique religious and cultural customs. I'm truly happy that similar religious rituals were also held during the time of the 10th Panchen Lama. The 11th Panchen Lama holds religious activities every year. Last year, the 11th Panchen Lama visited the Jampaling Monastery in Qamdo in Tibet and Yushu Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture in northwestern Qinghai Province. This year, he visited monasteries in Sichuan Province and Tibet to conduct religious activities and meet the needs of religious believers. I am very happy to see this. More than that, President Xi Jinping visited Tibet this year as 2021 is the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party of China and the 70th anniversary of the peaceful liberation of Tibet. This is his third trip to Tibet. President Xi's unfailing care and concern for Tibetans has been seen and remembered by millions of Tibetans.
However, critics say China is intervening in the reincarnation process in Tibet. How do you understand the situation? Do these processes align with Buddhist religious rituals and historical conventions?
Yes, this is true. Living Buddhas such as the Panchen Lama are identified by drawing lots from the golden urn. The reincarnation system for the living Buddhas in Tibet should be approved by the central government since the Qing dynasty. There are many special religious rituals for the identification of the reincarnated living Buddhas in Tibetan Buddhism. This procedure involves recognition from both the local and central governments, a practice that has been in place for hundreds of years. The Qing government granted seals and titles to living Buddhas such as the Dalai Lama and the Panchen Lama, which can be seen in Norbalinka and museums. The reincarnated living Buddhas are identified and approved through drawing lots from the golden urn and the golden certificate of appointment. Therefore, the central government has recognized the reincarnation system of the living Buddhas and conferred titles on them for a long time. The process of drawing lots from the golden urn is used to identify the reincarnated living Buddha, including the Grand Living Buddha, the Panchen Lama, according to the religious rituals and historical conventions of Tibetan Buddhism. The reincarnation system has been introduced for a long time and is still followed today. The reincarnated living Buddhas have to be approved by the central government. Foreign countries have no right to interfere in this matter.
In 2019, you donated around 380 cultural relics and historic literature to China. Many of these are classified as first or second grade cultural relics of China. Why did you do this?
I have donated 380 cultural relics to our country. My country and people have always been kind to me. I want to make my modest contribution to the country and my hometown. I genuinely wish my country and its people prosperity and well-being. These relics are the collection of generations. I gave them to better protect them, so that they can be preserved for hundreds of years more. Before my life comes to an end, I want to donate these cultural relics to the museum, to be registered and taken care of by the country, for many reasons. This is a long-term solution as well as my genuine wish. My hope is that the country prospers and the people are at peace.
In previous interviews, you've talked about one of your hopes being to share the real picture of Tibet with Tibetan people living overseas. Now, you have invited them to take a look themselves. Of course, we have to wait till after the pandemic is over. What do you want to say to them if you could use this opportunity today?
Although I spent 30 to 40 years abroad, I was closely involved with the Chinese consulate and the United Front Work Department of the CPC Central Committee. And I was in and out of Tibet many times since 1984 to visit relatives and attend commemorative events as a guest. I have shared in written and oral form the real situation in Tibet that I have witnessed. Foreigners are very interested in knowing what Tibet looks like today. So I have many CDs with me and play them while explaining. I have showed my overseas audience Tibet's development and how people are living in prosperity and contentment today. There is a proverb, seeing is believing, and I encourage them to come to Tibet to see for themselves.
My exclusive interview with Tulku Koondhor, a living Buddha from the Tibet Autonomous Region. With that, we come to the end of this special edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.